Hey everyone, Blaze here. Today I'm finishing the trio. Last video I painted Shadow Sight. This video I'm painting Rootspring and Bristlefrost. And as always, these customs will be for sale on my Etsy, which is in the description. And also I have the link to the Google form if you would like to order your own custom. And I'm just going to talk about Rootspring and Bristlefrost, mostly about their relationship, as I personally don't believe they made a lot of sense. And I do think this is actually pretty common opinion, but I'm just going to talk about how I think there's much more interesting direction the Hunters could have taken it, which most notably would exclude this relationship entirely and focus more on Stemleaf's rejection of Bristlefrost. So first off, just to establish why I didn't think that Root and Bristle made a lot of sense, was that since they're both POV characters, we saw a lot into their mind, but there was no indication that Bristlefrost was anywhere near romantically interested in Rootspring. Like, she was just appreciating him and his friendship, and out of nowhere she was like entirely in love with him. And with other cross-clan relationships such as Crowfeather and Leafpool, which also most people I think agree doesn't really make sense, at least you could argue that Crowfeather wasn't a POV character, so you don't really know what was going on in his mind. But for this one, it just didn't make sense. And also how they both agreed to stay with their clans, and then like 2 pages later they were like in love and like, whatever, we'll get together, you know. And I think it would have been better if they hadn't fallen in love at all. And I wish she was more heartbroken over Stemleaf's rejection, especially with how quickly in the actual books she got over it and how nonchalant she seemed over his death. And I think it would have been more interesting if they focused more on this rejection, as it could have paralleled Ashfur's rejection over Squirrelflight to some extent. First, realistically, she would have been jealous of Spotfur, as Stemleaf quite literally chose Spotfur over Bristlefrost, and much like Squirrelflight choosing Brambleclaw over Ashfur, this jealousy would have, or could have, linked Bristlefrost and Ashfur much more, making him befriending her and her following him seem a little more justified, as they share each other's negative emotions and can relate to one another in some form of bitterness. And I think this would also change Bristlefrost's character, making her a little more likable. Even though we likely would not agree with the choice to support Ashfur, we would understand her temporarily loyalty, as there is a connection and some empathy. And instead of what actually happened, which Bristlefrost just followed him out of naive loyalty, where she just always will blindly follow the code and the leader, which just makes her a little more unlikable and unsupportable, I think. And I don't think she necessarily should have been like a villain or an antagonist. I think she could have slowly changed over time as she saw the corrupt nature of the imposter, Bramblestar, and chose to, in the end, support her clanmates and the members of the other clans over one single cat, even if this cat is her clan, quote-unquote leader. And I think it would have been more interesting for there to be some bitterness between Spotfur and Bristlefrost, with the latter obviously being jealous and the former blaming Bristlefrost for her mate's death, since Bristlefrost was the one who brought the imposter and supported him. And there also could have been some more closure, I think, between Stemleaf and Bristlefrost in the Dark Forest. And this closure, I think, would have made it so much more powerful when Bristlefrost not only fights against Ashfur, but also ends up killing him and sacrificing herself. And I think this also would have left her with maybe a more likable reputation among the fan base, as I think also many people do agree that Bristlefrost was quite a boring and unlikable character. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and if you have any future video ideas, comment them down below, and don't forget to check out my Etsy if you would like to buy Warrior Cat customs.